The whole room went silent the moment the little black girl stepped onto the stage. Her tiny hands trembled. Her shoes were old and too loose. Her hair was tied back with a ribbon that looked like it had been washed too many times. She looked nothing like the other dancers, girls in shining pink outfits, clean ballet buns, and shoes that sparkled under the lights. The judges didn't hide their confusion. One of them even whispered, "Who let her in here?" But then the music began. And something happened. The girl lifted her arms, closed her eyes for half a second, and when she began to dance, the entire room froze. Her feet glided like she was born in that motion. Her jumps were light, her turns smooth. Everyone stared as if they were watching something impossible. Even the judge, who frowned at her before, slowly covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. But just when the girl reached the final spin, the one that could change everything, a loud bang echoed from backstage. The music stopped. The girl stumbled. The judges gasped. And what happened next? No one in that room ever expected. Here we tell stories of strength, love, and redemption, where every struggle hides a deeper meaning. Stay inspired and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories. It all began 2 months earlier, on a windy morning in the small town of Elmwood. The sun was barely rising when an old woman named Mrs. Thompson stepped outside her tiny blue house with her cane. She was well known in the neighborhood. Some people saw her as strict, others as wise, but everyone respected her. She had been a ballet teacher for more than 40 years, but since her husband passed away, she had stopped teaching. Most kids were too afraid to even approach her porch. But that morning, something unusual caught her eye. There, sitting on the sidewalk across from her house, was a little girl she had never seen before. The child hugged her knees, wearing a backpack that looked too heavy for her small shoulders. Her clothes were faded, and her sneakers had holes at the tips. Mrs. Thompson narrowed her eyes. "Why is she here?" she whispered to herself. When the girl realized she was being watched, she stood up quickly. "Good morning, ma'am," she said softly. Her voice was gentle, but there was a sadness inside it that made the old woman pause. "Morning," Mrs. Thompson replied. "Do you need something?" The girl shook her head. "No, ma'am. I'm just waiting for my mom to finish her night shift. She works at the diner down the street." Mrs. Thompson nodded slowly. She wanted to go back into her house, but something about the child kept her standing there. Maybe it was the way the girl's eyes roamed around as if she was searching for something she lost long ago. Maybe it was the quiet strength in her tiny voice. "What's your name?" the old woman finally asked. "Naomi," the girl answered with a small smile, one of those smiles that tries to be brave even when life is not. Mrs. Thompson nodded again. "Naomi. That's a lovely name." The girl seemed surprised anyone thought so. A breeze swept across the street, blowing some leaves past Naomi's feet. Without thinking, she lifted her arms the same way ballet dancers do when they begin a routine. She twirled once lightly, almost without touching the ground. Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened. "That move," she whispered. Naomi stopped immediately, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. My mom says I shouldn't dance in public. People laugh sometimes." "Why would anyone laugh?" the old woman asked, confused. Naomi dropped her eyes. "Because I'm not like the other girls in the ballet videos. I don't have the right clothes. I can't afford classes. And sometimes, people just say mean things." Mrs. Thompson felt something tighten in her chest, a mix of anger and sadness. She had lived long enough to know how cruel people could be for no good reason. "Do you like dancing?" she asked. Naomi nodded. "I don't just like it. I feel like dancing is the only time I'm not scared." The old woman studied her closely. There was something special about this girl. Something she couldn't explain. A spark. A light. A fire she hadn't seen in years. "Would you like to learn real ballet?" Mrs. Thompson asked suddenly. Naomi's eyes shot up. "Me? Learn ballet? But I can't pay. I don't have anything." "You don't need money to have talent," the old woman replied firmly. Naomi blinked, unsure if she heard correctly. "You would teach me?" Mrs. Thompson nodded once. And for the first time that morning, Naomi smiled brightly, as if the sun itself had risen inside her. For the next few weeks, something beautiful began to grow. Every day after school, Naomi rushed to the old woman's house. Mrs. Thompson would open the door with a stern look, but inside she had already prepared a small space in her living room, cleared furniture, taped lines on the floor, and even placed a mirror against the wall. First, Naomi struggled. She fell often. Her legs shook. Her shoes slipped. She got frustrated. She cried. But every time she wanted to give up, Mrs. Thompson would tap her cane on the floor and say, "Strength does not come from having an easy life. Strength comes from dancing even when life tries to push you down." And Naomi kept trying. Slowly, she learned to lift her chin with confidence, to point her toes with grace, to spin without fear. Her body grew stronger, her heart braver. But just as things were getting better, the first danger appeared. One cold afternoon, when Naomi walked out of Mrs. Thompson's house after practice, 3 older girls were waiting on the sidewalk. They wore matching pink ballet jackets from Elmwood Academy, the fancy dance school that didn't let outsiders join. "Look who thinks she's a ballerina," one girl sneered. Naomi looked down, clutching her backpack. Another girl stepped closer. "Heard you've been practicing with the old lady," she said. "You really think you can dance like us? You don't belong on any stage." Naomi tried to step back, but they blocked her. Mrs. Thompson watched from the window, her cane trembling in her hand. And before Naomi could say a word, one of the girls grabbed her notebook, the one where Naomi wrote every dance step she learned, and lifted it above her head. "What's this? Little princess thinks she's special," the girl teased. Then she smirked, and began to tear the pages out, one by one, before Naomi's eyes, before Mrs. Thompson could reach the door. And that moment changed everything. Naomi stood frozen as the pages of her precious notebook fluttered through the air like broken wings. The girls laughed as the wind carried the torn pieces across the street. Each page held something important, her steps, her drawings, her hopes, and now they drifted away like they meant nothing at all. "Stop!" Naomi cried, running after the pieces. "Please don't do that." But the girls only laughed harder. Mrs. Thompson finally pushed open her door. "Hey!" she shouted, her voice shaking with anger. "You leave her alone." The girls turned, but instead of backing off, they rolled their eyes. "It's just a notebook," one of them said. "It's not like she'll ever be good enough to use it." "You don't talk to her that way," Mrs. Thompson said, stepping forward with her cane. The tallest girl crossed her arms. "Or what? You'll hit us with your stick," she mocked. Mrs. Thompson's face tightened, but before she could speak again, Naomi ran forward and grabbed the last torn piece of her notebook from the ground. Her hands trembled, and her eyes filled with tears that she tried hard not to let fall. One of the girls looked at Naomi's face and smirked. "Ah, is the little dancer going to cry?" At those words, Naomi felt something she didn't recognize rise inside her. A mix of shame, anger, and deep sadness. She wanted to yell. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. But instead she whispered, "Why are you doing this? I didn't do anything to you." The shortest girl shrugged. "People like you don't belong in ballet classes. That's it. People like you." The words stabbed Naomi's chest. She didn't have to ask what they meant. She had heard them before. Not always said out loud, but whispered. Felt. Thrown at her like invisible stones. Before anything worse could happen, Mrs. Thompson stepped between them. Her voice was low but sharp. "All of you go home. Right now. And if I see you near Naomi again, I will speak to your parents myself." The girls hesitated. They didn't expect the old woman to challenge them. After a moment, the leader scoffed. "Whatever. She still doesn't belong here." Then they walked away, laughing as if nothing had happened. When they disappeared down the street, Naomi finally let her tears fall. She clutched the torn pages against her chest like pieces of her heart. Mrs. Thompson sighed deeply. "Come inside, child." Naomi followed silently. Inside the house, the old woman helped her sit down on the couch. She carefully gathered the ripped pages from Naomi's hands and placed them on the coffee table. "I'm sorry," Naomi whispered. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Mrs. Thompson looked at her in surprise. "Trouble? You didn't cause trouble. They were the ones acting cruel." Naomi shook her head. "This is why my mom always tells me not to dream too big. It just makes people mad." The old woman sat beside her, her voice softer now. "Naomi, dreams don't make people mad. Jealousy does. Those girls saw something in you they didn't expect. Naomi wiped her face. What could they possibly see? Talent, Mrs. Thompson said simply. Real talent. The kind that can't be bought with fancy shoes or pretty outfits. Naomi didn't answer. She didn't feel talented. She felt small. Mrs. Thompson placed a warm hand over Naomi's. Listen to me. What they did was wrong. But you cannot let their words decide who you are. I just wanted to learn to dance, Naomi whispered. Why is that so hard? The old woman looked at her with kind eyes. Because the world isn't always fair. But that's why we keep dancing. Naomi took a shaky breath. But I don't even have my notebook anymore. All my notes are ruined. Mrs. Thompson picked up one of the torn pages. Then we'll make a new one. Together. Naomi looked uncertain. You mean start over? Yes, the old woman smiled. Every great dancer starts over many times. For the first time since the girls left, Naomi felt a small flicker of hope. But as she tried to smile, a sudden knock echoed at the door. Mrs. Thompson frowned. Who could that be? She stood slowly and opened the door. On the porch stood a tall man in a dark jacket. His face was stiff, and he looked down at Mrs. Thompson with cold, unfriendly eyes. Are you the woman teaching Naomi Walker ballet? He asked. Mrs. Thompson hesitated. Yes. And you are? I'm Officer Collins, he said, flashing a badge. I need to speak to you about a report we received. A report? Mrs. Thompson repeated. About what? The officer stepped closer. About an older woman forcing a child to come to her house every day. We were told the child may be unsafe. Naomi's heart dropped. What? That's not true, she cried, running to the door. She's not forcing me. I asked her to teach me. But Officer Collins didn't look at Naomi. His eyes stayed on Mrs. Thompson, unblinking. Ma'am, he said firmly, I need to come inside. Mrs. Thompson's face went pale. You think I'm harming her? It's not my place to assume, the officer said. But I need to make sure. Naomi shook her head wildly. No, she didn't do anything wrong. She's helping me. But the officer stepped past them, looking around the house. Naomi watched helplessly as fear twisted Mrs. Thompson's expression. The old woman had spent her life helping kids, teaching dance and supporting young girls who had nowhere else to go. And now someone was accusing her of something she would never dream of doing. Who reported this? Mrs. Thompson asked quietly. Officer Collins folded his arms. Someone from the Elmwood Academy Ballet School. They said you were taking a child without permission. Naomi gasped. The girls. It had to be them. Before Naomi or Mrs. Thompson could react, the officer lifted the torn pages from the table. His eyes narrowed. What's this? He asked. Naomi stepped forward. They tore my notebook. Those girls. But Officer Collins cut her off. Ma'am, he said to Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me for questioning. Naomi's eyes widened in horror. No, she cried. She didn't do anything. The officer reached for Mrs. Thompson's arm. And right then, right there, the old woman collapsed to the floor. Mrs. Thompson. Naomi screamed as the old woman crumpled onto the wooden floor. Her cane clattered beside her, rolling until it hit the wall. Naomi dropped to her knees, shaking her gently. Please wake up. Please. Officer Collins stepped back, startled. Ma'am, he called out, kneeling beside her. Can you hear me? But Mrs. Thompson didn't move. Her eyes were closed, and her breathing came in short, weak gasps. Naomi's hands trembled as she held the woman's arm. You scared her. You kept saying she did something wrong. I didn't mean, the officer began, but Naomi wasn't listening. Call an ambulance, she cried. Please. Officer Collins grabbed his radio quickly and called for help. Within minutes, the faint echo of a siren grew louder outside the house. Naomi felt like the world was spinning. Her mentor, the only person who believed in her, lay still like a fragile doll. Two paramedics rushed inside with a stretcher. What happened? One asked. She collapsed, Officer Collins said, trying to stay calm. She was under a lot of stress. The paramedics checked her pulse, her breathing, then nodded. She's alive, but we need to move her fast. Naomi wiped her tears and stood back as they lifted Mrs. Thompson onto the stretcher. She looked so small, so breakable. As they carried her toward the door, Mrs. Thompson's hand slipped slightly, hanging off the side. Without thinking, Naomi grabbed it gently. "I'm here," she whispered. "Don't leave me, okay?" One of the paramedics paused. "Are you her family?" Naomi shook her head. "No, she's my teacher." The paramedic nodded. "You can come to the hospital later. Right now we need room." Naomi let go slowly, watching as they rushed her out of the house. The siren started again, louder this time, and within seconds, the ambulance drove away. Officer Collins looked down at Naomi. His face wasn't cold now, it looked worried. "Naomi," he said quietly, "I didn't mean for this to happen. I was just responding to a report." Naomi stepped back. "You shouldn't have believed them," she whispered. "You didn't even listen to me." The officer sighed deeply, guilt pooling in his eyes. Sometimes adults make mistakes too. But Naomi didn't respond. She just turned and ran out of the house, sprinting toward the street. She didn't know where she was going. She just needed to move, to breathe, to stop feeling like everything was falling apart. The cold wind hit her face as she ran past neighbors who turned to watch. Her chest hurt, not from running but from fear. Mrs. Thompson was the first person who made her feel like she belonged. And now she was gone, taken away on a stretcher because someone lied. Because someone wanted to hurt her. She stopped near the corner of Maple Street, leaning against a tree. Her heart thumped wildly. Tears blinded her vision. "What do I do now?" she whispered to herself. For a long moment the world felt too heavy, too loud, too unfair. But then a voice spoke. "Naomi." She turned quickly. Walking toward her was her mother, Ms. Walker, dressed in her diner uniform. Her hair was messy from the long night shift, and her eyes widened when she saw her daughter's tear-stained face. "Baby, what happened?" she asked, rushing over. Naomi ran into her arms, crying harder. "Mom, it's Mrs. Thompson." She collapsed. "They said she did something wrong, but she didn't. They scared her and she fell and—" "Whoa, slow down," her mother said gently, holding her tighter. "Tell me everything." Between shaky breaths, Naomi explained what happened. The call, the officer, the false report, and the moment Mrs. Thompson collapsed. Ms. Walker frowned deeply. "Someone reported her? Who?" Naomi hesitated. I think it was the girls from Elmwood Academy." Her mother sighed, her jaw tightening. "Those girls again." Naomi wiped her eyes. "Mom, am I doing something wrong?" "No," her mother said firmly. "You're doing something brave. And sometimes people don't like brave things." The words were soft but strong, like a warm blanket around Naomi's heart. Ms. Walker took her hand. "Come on. Let's go to the hospital and check on Mrs. Thompson." Naomi nodded slowly. But as they started walking, a sleek black car pulled up beside them. The window rolled down. Inside sat a woman with sharp eyes and lipstick so red it almost glowed. "Excuse me," she said coldly. "Are you Naomi Walker?" Naomi stiffened. "Yes," Ms. Walker answered, stepping protectively in front of her daughter. "Who are you?" The woman smiled, though it wasn't a friendly smile. "My name is Ms. Delgado. I'm the director of Elmwood Academy Ballet School." Naomi felt a chill crawl down her back. Ms. Delgado rested her elbow on the window. "I heard you've been spending time with a former ballet instructor. One who is no longer certified to teach." Ms. Walker frowned. "Is there a problem with that?" "Well," Ms. Delgado continued, "we received concerning information that the child might be in unsafe conditions." Naomi's eyes widened. "That's not true." Ms. Delgado ignored her. "If Naomi wants to dance, she must join a proper ballet school. One with rules. Standards. Not whatever that old woman was running." Anger burned in Naomi's chest. "Don't talk about her like that." Ms. Delgado smirked. "Oh, did I upset you?" Ms. Walker stepped closer. "My daughter was safe. And she was learning. That's what matters." Ms. Delgado tilted her head. "Well, now that the authorities are involved, Mrs. Thompson won't be teaching anymore. For her own good." Naomi's fists tightened. "You're lying. You did this on purpose." Ms. Delgado raised one eyebrow. "Believe what you want. But Naomi, you should know something. She leaned forward slightly. You will never join the Elmwood Ballet team. Not now. Not ever. Our school has standards. There it was. The real message. The one wrapped in pretty words but filled with poison. Ms. Walker's voice grew sharp. We're done here. She pulled Naomi away and began to walk. But suddenly, Ms. Delgado said loudly, Oh, and Naomi, you might want to hurry. I heard Mrs. Thompson's condition is getting worse. Naomi stopped walking. Her heart skipped. What do you mean? She whispered, turning around. Ms. Delgado's smile widened. You'll see. Then the window rolled up. The car drove away, leaving Naomi shaking, leaving her unsure, leaving one terrible question echoing in her mind. What happened to Mrs. Thompson at the hospital? If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and emotional stories like this. Naomi's heart thudded painfully as Ms. Delgado's words echoed in her mind. Her condition is getting worse. She didn't want to believe the woman. She didn't want to trust anything she said. But the quiet, cold tone, the way she smirked, something about it felt real enough to freeze Naomi's legs in place. Ms. Walker knelt in front of her daughter. Sweetheart, look at me, she said gently. Naomi looked up, tears already gathering in her eyes. We don't listen to people who want to hurt us, her mother said firmly. Miss Delgado doesn't know anything about Mrs. Thompson's condition. She's trying to scare you. But what if she's right? Naomi whispered. What if something happened to her because of me? Naomi, Ms. Walker said, lifting her chin with 2 fingers. Nothing that happened is your fault. The only thing you did was try to follow your dream. And that is never wrong. Naomi nodded slowly, but fear still twisted inside her. We're going to the hospital right now, her mother said. We'll see for ourselves. They started walking fast, nearly running down the street toward the bus stop. Naomi didn't care about the cold or her shoelaces or even the people staring. She just needed to get to Mrs. Thompson. She needed to see her breathing, talking, smiling, anything. The bus arrived slower than usual, or maybe that was just how Naomi felt. Every second felt like sand slipping too quickly through her fingers. When they finally climbed inside, she pressed her face to the window, trying to keep her tears from falling. Ms. Walker placed an arm around her. She's strong, sweetheart. You know that. Naomi nodded again. But in her heart she felt a storm. What if the stress was too much? What if the accusation broke her? What if she never wakes up? She hugged herself tightly. When the bus finally reached Elmwood General Hospital, Naomi didn't wait for the doors to fully open. She squeezed through the gap and ran inside. The lobby smelled like clean floors and medicine. Nurses rushed past carrying charts, and the intercom beeped softly overhead. Naomi's hand shook as she approached the front desk. I'm here for Mrs. Thompson, she said breathlessly. She's an older lady. They brought her in a little while ago. The nurse blinked, surprised at the urgency. Do you know her full name? Yes. Evelyn Thompson. The nurse typed quickly, her eyes scanning the screen. Naomi leaned forward, her heart hammering. Please be okay. Please be okay. The nurse finally looked up. She's in room 214, she said. You can go, but only one visitor at a time. Naomi didn't even wait for her mother to respond. She sprinted down the hallway, following the numbers on the wall. 208,210,212. She slowed at 214. Her hand hovered over the door. She took a breath. Please be okay. Naomi pushed the door open and stepped inside. There, lying on a hospital bed, hooked up to wires and machines, was Mrs. Thompson. Her eyes were closed. Her face looked pale. Her hands rested on top of the blanket, looking thinner and older than ever. Naomi felt her whole body fall apart. Mrs. Thompson, she whispered, stepping closer. The old woman didn't move. Naomi reached out, gently touching her hand. It was warm, but not as warm as before. Not as full of life. I'm here, Naomi whispered, her voice cracking. I came as soon as I could. Still no movement. Her mother slowly entered behind her. Let her talk, baby. She can hear you, even if she doesn't respond. Naomi wiped her tears. Mrs. Thompson, I'm sorry. If I hadn't come to your house, if those girls hadn't. She stopped, her voice shaking too much to finish. She took a deep breath. I promise I'll keep dancing, she whispered. Just like you taught me. I won't give up. Then something happened. Mrs. Thompson's fingers twitched. Naomi gasped. Mom! She moved. Ms. Walker leaned over her shoulder, eyes wide. Evelyn? Can you hear us? Mrs. Thompson slowly cracked her eyes open, just an inch. It was small, but it was enough. Mrs. Thompson! Naomi cried, unable to stop herself. The old woman blinked, her voice faint and raspy. Naomi? Yes, Naomi said, gripping her hand gently. I'm here. Mrs. Thompson tried to smile, though it was weak. Are you all right, child? Me. Naomi blinked. I'm okay. You're the one who scared me. The woman let out a tiny laugh that quickly turned into a cough. Naomi panicked. I'll get a nurse, she said, taking a step back. But Mrs. Thompson squeezed her hand lightly. Stay. Naomi froze. Okay. The old woman swallowed slowly. Speaking hurt, but she forced herself. I'm sorry you had to see that. The officer scared me. I wasn't ready. Naomi shook her head. It wasn't your fault. Mrs. Thompson closed her eyes for a moment. The world can be cruel, but kindness always finds its way back. Naomi nodded, tears falling again. Just then the door opened. But it wasn't a nurse. It wasn't a doctor. A shadow filled the doorway. And then a voice spoke. Well, the voice said calmly. Isn't this touching? Naomi stiffened. Mrs. Thompson's eyes snapped open. Ms. Walker straightened, her face turning serious. Standing in the doorway, holding a clipboard and wearing a hospital badge, was Ms. Delgado. But this time she wasn't smiling. She stepped inside, closing the door slowly behind her. Naomi, she said, her voice like ice. We need to talk about your future. Mrs. Thompson tried to sit up. You stay away from her. Ms. Delgado ignored her. I've spoken with the board at Elmwood Academy, she continued. Given the situation, we believe it's best that Naomi stops training entirely until things are sorted out. Naomi felt her chest tighten. What? Why? Ms. Delgado raised one eyebrow. Because you are causing trouble, Naomi. The school cannot be connected with this incident. Ms. Walker stepped forward. She's not connected to anything. Leave her alone. Ms. Delgado sighed. I'm only trying to protect the school's image. And if Naomi continues this path, there will be consequences. Naomi's voice trembled. What consequences? Ms. Delgado looked at her with cold, sharp eyes. If you don't stop dancing with this woman, she said slowly, I will make sure no ballet school in this state ever accepts you. Naomi's heart stopped. And before any of them could move, she added one final threat. And trust me, I always get what I want. The room went silent. Naomi's breath caught in her throat. Mrs. Thompson's heart monitor beeped faster. And that was when everything took a turn. A sudden, loud alarm blared from the machine beside the bed. Mrs. Thompson gasped, clutching her chest. As the heart monitor spiked wildly, the heart monitor shrieked like a warning siren, its sharp beeping rising and falling in chaotic spikes. Naomi froze. Ms. Walker rushed forward. Ms. Delgado stepped back, startled as the machine flashed red. Mom! Naomi cried. What's happening? Get a nurse. Ms. Walker shouted, already reaching for Mrs. Thompson's shoulders. Naomi, go. Naomi ran to the door so fast she almost slipped. She flung it open and yelled down the hallway. Help! Somebody help! Two nurses sprinted toward the room, pushing a crash cart. A doctor followed behind, pulling on latex gloves. Naomi stepped aside as they rushed in, her heart hammering wildly. BP dropping, one nurse shouted. She's going into distress, move, said the doctor. Mrs. Thompson gasped for breath, her eyes fluttering as the medical team surrounded her. Naomi tried to push closer, but Ms. Walker caught her shoulders. Stay back, honey. They need room. But she needs me. Naomi cried. She needs doctors right now. Naomi trembled as she watched the nurses attach new wires to Mrs. Thompson's chest. The doctor adjusted the oxygen mask and checked the monitors. Heart rate unstable, a nurse said. She needs stabilization, prepare the injection, the doctor ordered. Naomi felt her stomach twist painfully. She hated seeing Mrs. Thompson so helpless. She hated hearing those awful beeps. And she hated that the person who caused all this, who scared her teacher into collapsing, stood calmly in the corner. Ms. Delgado. Even now she didn't look sorry. Just annoyed and impatient, tapping her fingers on the clipboard as if she were waiting for a meeting to end. The doctor injected something into the 4. The heart monitor steadied slightly, the beeps becoming slower, more controlled. She's stabilizing, one nurse said. Naomi let out a shaky breath. The doctor finally stepped back. Her vitals are improving, but she needs rest. No stress. No arguments. No visitors except immediate family. Ms. Walker nodded. Thank you. The doctor turned toward Naomi and softened. She'll be okay, he said gently. But you need to let her rest now. Naomi nodded, though her eyes remained on Mrs. Thompson's frail chest rising under the blankets. The medical team left the room just as fast as they came. The moment the door closed and silence returned, Ms. Delgado spoke. Well, she said sharply, I think that proves my point. Naomi turned toward her, anger flashing in her eyes. You caused this. I did no such thing, the woman said coolly. If she's so fragile, she shouldn't be teaching. It's irresponsible. Naomi stepped toward her. You threatened her. You scared her. That's why she collapsed. Ms. Delgado crossed her arms. I simply explained the situation. If her heart couldn't handle facts, that's hardly my fault. Ms. Walker raised her voice. Get out. Ms. Delgado blinked. Excuse me. I said get out, Ms. Walker repeated. You've done enough damage. You're not welcome here. Ms. Delgado's smile vanished. I was invited by the hospital as the school's representative. Well, we're uninviting you, Ms. Walker snapped. For the first time, Ms. Delgado's eyes hardened. Her lips tightened. You have no idea who you're talking to. Naomi stepped forward before her mother could. Yes, we do, she said firmly. Someone who's scared. Someone who sees a little girl dancing better than the students you paid thousands to teach. Ms. Delgado's expression flickered, just for a moment, before she regained her cold calm. You're a child, she said simply. You don't understand the world. But you will. Sooner or later. She reached for the doorknob. I'll be in touch, she said, voice low. And Naomi, don't make this any harder on yourself. Then she walked out. The door clicked shut. Naomi exhaled shakily and leaned against the wall. It felt as if all the air had been sucked from the room. Ms. Walker rushed to her, pulling her into a tight hug. You did good, her mother whispered. You stood up for yourself. I wasn't brave, Naomi murmured. I was just angry. Sometimes anger is the only thing that makes us speak when we're scared. Ms. Walker replied softly. Naomi looked over her mother's shoulder at Mrs. Thompson's still body. Her chest rose and fell slowly, the oxygen mask hissing with every breath. Mom, Naomi whispered. What if she doesn't get better? Ms. Walker stroked her back. She will. She's a fighter. But what if something else happens? What if that lady calls again? What if they blame me? What if? Ms. Walker knelt in front of her. Naomi, look at me. Naomi lifted her tear-filled eyes. You didn't cause any of this. Okay. Not one thing. But. No, her mother said firmly. You gave that woman joy again. A reason to open her door. A reason to teach. A reason to smile. You saved her. You didn't hurt her. Naomi swallowed hard. Do you hear me? Ms. Walker said again. Yes, Naomi whispered, though her heart still twisted with fear. Ms. Walker hugged her again. Then she stood. Let's give her some space, sweetheart. She needs to rest. We'll come back in the morning. Naomi nodded. She didn't want to leave, but she didn't want to make things worse either. They walked out of the room slowly. Naomi looked back one last time. She expected to see the quiet, still hospital room. But instead, she froze. Standing at the far end of the hallway, watching them, were the 3 ballet girls from Elmwood Academy. The same girls who tore her notebook apart. They weren't smiling this time. They weren't laughing. The tallest girl, the one who tore most of the pages, stepped forward slightly. Her eyes were cold. Naomi's hand tightened around her mother's. "Mom," she whispered. "That's them." Ms. Walker followed her gaze. The girls didn't move, didn't blink, didn't speak. They just stared. Then the leader raised her hand slowly and pointed directly at Naomi. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. And in that silent, tense hallway, something became clear. The girls weren't done with her yet. Not even close. The heart monitor shrieked like an alarm, loud and erratic, each beep stabbing Naomi's chest. Her hands trembled as she pressed them to her mouth, unable to stop the panicked tears from spilling. Ms. Walker knelt beside her, her own face pale but steady, trying to keep Naomi grounded. "She's alive," Ms. Walker whispered, though her voice shook. "The doctors are stabilizing her. Everything's going to be okay." Naomi didn't hear her. All she could see was Mrs. Thompson lying there, fragile and pale, the oxygen mask over her face making her look thinner than Naomi remembered. Naomi's small fingers hovered over her mentor's hand, desperate to hold on, as if her touch could keep her alive. Suddenly the door opened. Naomi stiffened. Her heart skipped. Standing there was one of the 3 Elmwood Academy girls, the tallest, meanest one who had torn her notebook. The girl's smirk was gone. Now she looked almost serious. Behind her the other 2 followed, leaning against the wall like shadows. Naomi's chest tightened. "They're back," Ms. Walker murmured, noticing the tension in Naomi's posture. Naomi stepped closer to her mother. "Why are they here? What do they want?" The tallest girl crossed her arms. "We're here to make sure you understand something, Naomi." Her voice was soft but cold like ice sliding across stone. "You're not supposed to be dancing. Not with her. Not anywhere." Naomi swallowed hard. "You're lying. Mrs. Thompson isn't. She didn't do anything wrong." The girl's eyes flicked to Mrs. Thompson. "Do you think we care? You're causing problems. People like us, we notice things. And people notice troublemakers." Naomi shook her head. "I'm not a troublemaker. I just want to dance. That's all." Her voice cracked. "I just want to learn." The other 2 girls snickered, but the sound didn't reach Naomi. She was focused entirely on the beeping machine and her mentor's trembling hands beneath the blanket. "Naomi," Ms. Walker said softly, "ignore them. They don't matter." But Naomi's legs felt heavy. Fear pressed down on her chest. What if they were right? What if Elmwood Academy could really stop her from dancing forever? The tallest girl stepped closer. "I'm telling you, stop now, or it will only get worse." Naomi swallowed again. Her throat was tight, but a tiny voice inside her whispered, "You can't let them scare you. You can't let them win." Then unexpectedly Mrs. Thompson stirred. Her eyes flicked open, weak but sharp. "Naomi," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the beeping. Naomi's eyes widened. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm here. I'm right here." She took her hand gently, afraid to squeeze too hard. The old woman's lips curved faintly. "They cannot stop you. Dance from your heart." Naomi blinked, feeling a spark of hope ignite in her chest. She had promised herself she would keep dancing no matter what. And now, even here, seeing Mrs. Thompson so fragile, she understood that promise was bigger than fear. The tallest girl stepped forward again. "We're not done," she said, her voice sharper this time. "I think you need to understand what happens when someone challenges us." Naomi's stomach turned over. She realized that these girls were relentless. They weren't just mean, they were determined to control her. Before she could react, one of the other girls grabbed Naomi's backpack, shaking it violently. "Let's see what treasures the little dancer has been hiding," she sneered. Naomi tried to pull it back. "Give it back. Stop." The clipboard woman who had been in the hospital doorway earlier suddenly stepped forward. "Hey, that's enough." Her voice carried authority, but the girls didn't move. "Stay out of this," the tallest girl spat. "This doesn't concern you." Naomi's mother stepped between them. "It concerns everyone when someone is threatening my child. Step back. Now." The tension was so thick the air seemed to crackle. Naomi clutched her backpack to her chest and backed closer to the bed where Mrs. Thompson lay. Then, without warning, the eldest rival girl pushed Naomi hard. Naomi stumbled back, almost hitting the wall. Her knees buckled. She fell into the corner of the room, her hands scraping against the floor. Pain shot through her palms, but fear made her stronger than the pain. Enough! Ms. Walker shouted, her voice like a whip. Stop this right now. The tallest girl paused, her eyes narrowing. This isn't over, she hissed, and with that, they backed away slowly, leaving Naomi trembling in the corner. Naomi's chest heaved. She looked over at Mrs. Thompson. The old woman's eyes were still weak but watching her, alive, holding on. Naomi crawled to the bed, kneeling beside her. I won't let them stop me, Naomi whispered. I promise I won't. Mrs. Thompson smiled faintly. I know, child. Strength comes from dancing, even when life pushes you down. Naomi nodded, tears streaming down her face. She held her mentor's hand tightly. Every word Mrs. Thompson had taught her, every step they had practiced together, every note torn from that old notebook, it all came rushing back. And suddenly she felt ready. Ready to fight for her dream. Ready to stand tall, even against the tallest girl in the school. Outside the room, footsteps echoed. Naomi looked up to see another nurse peeking in. She shook her head. She needs to rest, the nurse whispered. No visitors. Naomi nodded. But she wasn't leaving her mentor. She whispered, I'll stay right here. Just for a little while. I'll make sure nothing else happens. For a moment the room was still. The only sounds were the soft beeps of the heart monitor and Naomi's quiet breathing. Then the door opened again, this time slowly, almost silently. Naomi looked up. Her heart skipped a beat. It was one of the rival girls again. Not all three this time. Just the tallest one. And in her hand she held something shiny and small. Something that glinted under the fluorescent lights. Naomi's stomach dropped. I found this, the girl said, her voice calm, almost cold. You dropped it last time you came here. Naomi's eyes widened. That shiny little object. It was her medal from the first recital she had ever danced in. The only one she had left after her notebook was torn. You can't have it, Naomi said, her voice shaking. It's mine. The girl's lips curled into a small, cruel smile. Oh, I think I can. And maybe, if you want it back, you'll have to do exactly what we say. Naomi felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Her heart pounded. Her palms were sweaty. She looked down at Mrs. Thompson, who blinked weakly at her as if to say, be brave. Always. And at that moment, Naomi realized something terrifying and true. The fight for her dream wasn't over. It had only just begun. Naomi's heart raced. She stared at the shiny medal in the tallest girl's hand, her fingers curling around her backpack strap as if it could protect her. That medal wasn't just a piece of metal. It was proof of her hard work, her courage, and her dream. And now it felt like it was dangling just out of her reach. I need that back, Naomi said, her voice shaking but determined. The tallest girl smirked. You want it? Then you have to follow my rules. What rules? Naomi demanded, stepping forward. You know the ones, the girl said, her tone low. Stay out of Elmwood Academy, stop bothering your little old teacher, and don't show up at any auditions for a while. Or your medal stays with me. Naomi's chest tightened. Stop dancing? Stop learning? Stop practicing with Mrs. Thompson, the one person who had believed in her when no one else did. I can't, she said firmly. I won't. The girl's smirk deepened, but before she could respond, Ms. Walker stepped in front of Naomi, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. Leave her alone, she said. You're not taking anything from my daughter. The girl raised her eyebrows. Her mom can't protect her from life, you know. Naomi's stomach twisted. Her mom's words from earlier, you've got to stand tall, Naomi, even when life pushes you down, came back to her. And suddenly she felt something surge inside. A fire she hadn't realized was growing. I'm not afraid of you, Naomi said, standing a little taller. And you can't scare me into giving up. Ever. The tallest girl's expression flickered. For the first time, Naomi thought she saw a hint of doubt. Then, with a flick of her wrist, the girl threw the medal to the ground and walked out without another word. Naomi bent down and picked up the medal, feeling a rush of relief and pride. She held it tightly against her chest, like it belonged to her again, and whispered, No one can take this from me. Not now, not ever. Ms. Walker smiled at her. Good. That's my girl. But just as Naomi was beginning to feel safe, the door to the hospital room opened again. A nurse stepped in holding a clipboard, looking anxious. Mrs. Thompson's heart rate has been fluctuating, the nurse said quickly. It's stable now, but it could drop again at any moment. We need to minimize stress, or she might not recover as quickly as we hoped. Naomi's hands tightened on the metal. She looked at her mentor lying there, so small and fragile. She had to protect her. She had to make sure nothing else happened to her. I'll stay here, Naomi said firmly. I'll be quiet. I won't cause trouble. The nurse nodded, understanding. Just make sure she doesn't get startled. And don't worry, Naomi. She's strong. She's survived harder things than this. Naomi nodded, but in her heart, she knew the fight wasn't over. Not yet. Later that evening, Naomi and her mother returned to the small apartment they shared. Naomi placed the medal on her dresser carefully, then sank onto the couch, exhausted. Mom, Naomi said quietly, why are people so mean? Why do they try to stop me just because I want to dance? Ms. Walker sat beside her, pulling her close. Naomi, sometimes people fear what they don't understand. They see your talent, your courage, and it scares them. That's all. You can't let that stop you. You have to keep going. You have to keep shining, even when they try to push you down. Naomi nodded slowly. She remembered Mrs. Thompson's words from the hospital. Strength comes from dancing, even when life pushes you down. She could feel that strength beginning to bloom inside her. Fragile but powerful. I want to be strong, Naomi whispered. Like Mrs. Thompson. You already are, her mother said softly. You just don't realize it yet. The next morning, Naomi woke early, the sunlight streaming through the thin curtains. She dressed quickly in her practice clothes and tied her hair back tightly. Today, she was going to see Mrs. Thompson. Today, she was going to dance. At the hospital, Naomi tiptoed into the room, careful not to make a sound. Mrs. Thompson lay in bed, eyes closed, but she looked calmer than the day before. Naomi approached quietly, setting her small dance bag down beside the bed. Good morning, Naomi whispered. Mrs. Thompson's eyes fluttered open slowly. Naomi, she said softly, her voice still weak. I'm here, Naomi replied, smiling gently. I brought my practice clothes. Can we dance today? Just a little. The old woman's lips curved into a faint smile. Just a little, yes. But carefully. Very carefully. Naomi nodded eagerly and began moving quietly in the small space beside the bed. She stretched her arms slowly, lifted her legs lightly, and twirled softly. She danced as if no one was watching, but in truth, she was dancing for Mrs. Thompson, for herself, and for the dream that no one could take away. Mrs. Thompson watched silently, tears brimming in her eyes. She couldn't move much yet, but she felt Naomi's courage, her determination, and her heart. Every movement spoke of hope, strength, and love. Naomi's dancing grew more confident. She remembered every lesson Mrs. Thompson had taught her, the way to lift her chin, to hold her arms, to feel the music through her whole body. Even in the quiet hospital room, her movements carried a light that no illness or threat could dim. Then suddenly the door opened again. Naomi froze. It was one of the Elmwood Academy girls, the one who had thrown the medal. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something new in her eyes, a strange hesitation. Naomi's heart pounded. She didn't stop moving, though. She danced around the small space, spinning and twirling, careful not to bump into anything. The girl stood silently in the doorway for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice softer than before. You're really good, she said. Naomi paused mid-twirl. I thank you, she said cautiously. The girl looked down, then back up at Naomi. I didn't think someone like you could dance like that. Naomi's chest tightened. Someone like me? She repeated. You know, different. I didn't understand before, the girl admitted quietly. Naomi's hands trembled slightly. She didn't know what to say. She wanted to feel anger, maybe revenge, but there was something else now. Something new. Mrs. Thompson, still lying in the bed, whispered, Kindness opens doors where fear cannot enter. Naomi nodded slowly, understanding at last. Her dancing had reached someone else. Her courage, her heart, had begun to change even the meanest person in the room. The girl took a small step forward. I'm sorry for what we did before, she said, looking down. Naomi's lips curved into a small smile. "Thank you," she said softly. "It means a lot." Ms. Walker, standing behind Naomi, felt her heart swell with pride. Her daughter was learning more than ballet. She was learning courage, empathy, and the power of standing strong. But even as Naomi danced, a shadow lingered in the hallway. A new challenge, a new threat, something unseen, waiting for the right moment. Naomi didn't notice it yet. She couldn't. All she knew was this. She had survived threats, fear, and cruelty. She had danced through tears and pain. And now she was unstoppable. Yet the feeling in the pit of her stomach told her that the fight wasn't over. Something bigger, something even more extreme was coming. Something that would test her heart, her courage, and her love for dance in ways she had never imagined. And she would have to face it, or risk losing everything. The days that followed were tense. Naomi returned to her small apartment each night, her medal safely tucked in a drawer, but her heart never fully rested. The memory of the Elmwood girls watching her dance at the hospital lingered in her mind like a shadow, whispering threats she didn't yet understand. Even though one of them had softened, Naomi knew the others were still determined. They would not give up so easily. But Naomi had Mrs. Thompson now. Even though the old woman was still weak and confined to her hospital bed, her words and lessons lingered in Naomi's mind. "Dance from your heart," Mrs. Thompson had said. "Strength comes from doing what is right, even when the world pushes back." Naomi held those words close as she practiced in her room. Each movement, each small twirl carried more than just hope. It carried resilience. She imagined the hospital room, the medals, the rivals, the judgmental glances, and the doubts she had once felt. And with every step she pushed them all away. Her mother, Ms. Walker, watched quietly from the corner. She never interrupted, only offered smiles and occasional words of encouragement. "Your heart is shining, Naomi. Keep it strong." One evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, Naomi and Ms. Walker returned to the hospital. The old woman's condition had stabilized, but she was still fragile. Naomi held her hand gently, and Mrs. Thompson smiled faintly. "You're dancing," she whispered. "Even when you are afraid, you keep dancing." Naomi nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm trying, Mrs. Thompson. I won't let them stop me." Before they could speak further, the door creaked open. Naomi's heart skipped. She had begun to feel safe, but the feeling vanished the moment the door moved. Standing there was the tallest Elmwood girl, flanked by the other two. Their expressions were unreadable, but their presence alone radiated menace. Naomi's mother stepped in front of her, protective and fierce. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. The tallest girl's eyes flicked toward Naomi, and for a moment, Naomi thought she might attack again. But then the girl's gaze shifted, taking in Mrs. Thompson. Her expression hardened. "We came to make sure this doesn't continue," she said. "We won't let her." "Let her what?" Naomi interrupted, stepping forward. "Mrs. Thompson is my teacher. She's my mentor. You have no right to stop her from teaching me." The tallest girl's jaw tightened. "You're naive," she said. "You think you can just dance and the world will be kind. It won't. People like us, we set the rules." Naomi's chest tightened. She wanted to cry, to run, to scream, but she took a deep breath and stood her ground. She thought of Mrs. Thompson, frail but unwavering, and of all the lessons she had learned about courage. "I don't care about your rules," Naomi said firmly. "I will dance. I will learn. And I won't let you scare me or her. Ever." The room was silent for a moment. Then the tallest girl stepped forward slowly, her eyes narrowing. "You're defiant," she said softly. "I like that. But defiance can be dangerous." Naomi's heart raced. "What do you mean?" Before the girl could answer, the hospital alarm suddenly blared. Naomi's blood ran cold. She turned toward Mrs. Thompson. The old woman's heart monitor spiked violently, beeping erratically. "Mom!" Naomi cried, rushing forward. Ms. Walker grabbed her daughter's shoulders. "Stay back. Give her space." Doctors and nurses rushed in immediately. Naomi felt frozen, watching as they worked to stabilize Mrs. Thompson. The Elmwood girls froze in the corner, looking shocked and almost guilty. Naomi felt anger rise in her chest. She didn't have time for their fear or hesitation. Her mentor needed her attention. Naomi stepped closer, kneeling beside the bed. "Mrs. Thompson," she cried. You have to stay with me. Don't leave. The old woman's eyes opened weakly, and for the first time in weeks, Naomi saw clarity in her gaze. Naomi, dance your heart. Always, she whispered. Naomi nodded, gripping her mentor's hand tightly. I will. I promise. The medical team worked quickly, stabilizing her vitals. Naomi's tears blurred her vision, but she stayed focused on Mrs. Thompson, repeating her promise silently over and over. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the monitor's beeping returned to a steady rhythm. Naomi exhaled shakily, relief washing over her in waves. Her hands were shaking, but she held on to her mentors tightly. The tallest Elmwood girl stepped forward slowly. I didn't think she'd survive that, she said quietly. Maybe I underestimated her. Naomi turned to her breathless. You don't understand. She's stronger than anyone could imagine. And I'm not giving up on her, or on my dancing because of you. The girl's expression softened slightly, though Naomi could still sense the challenge in her eyes. You're fearless, she said. I've never met anyone like you. Maybe that's why we're afraid. Naomi blinked. Afraid of what? Of someone who won't bend, the girl replied. Someone who refuses to let fear control her. Naomi swallowed, realizing for the first time that even her rivals were not completely heartless. They had their own insecurities and fears, and her courage challenged them in ways they hadn't expected. Mrs. Thompson's weak voice spoke again. Naomi's strength is contagious, she said softly. Keep going, child. Naomi nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked at her mentor, at the Elmwood girls, and even at her mother, who had been silently supporting her through every crisis. She understood finally that courage wasn't just about standing up to others, it was about standing up for what was right, no matter the obstacles. Suddenly, the tallest girl dropped something small and shiny on the floor. Naomi recognized it immediately. Another Elmwood Academy medal, the one she had seen hanging around the girls' necks during the hospital incident. Naomi picked it up carefully, examining it. You can keep it, the girl said quietly. As a truce. For now. Naomi's heart skipped. She didn't expect this. Thank you, she said softly. I won't forget it. The girl nodded once and stepped back. The other two followed, silent, leaving Naomi, her mother, and Mrs. Thompson alone in the room. The door closed quietly behind them. Naomi looked down at the medal in her hands and then at Mrs. Thompson. We did it, she whispered. We really did it. Mrs. Thompson's weak smile grew a little stronger. Yes, child, never stop dancing. Naomi nodded, tears flowing freely now. She felt a warmth inside her chest, a light that no fear or threat could extinguish. She knew the fight wasn't over completely. There would always be challenges, jealousy, and fear. But she also knew something far more important. She had the courage, the heart, and the mentor to face anything. Her mother squeezed her hand. You've grown so much, Naomi. I'm proud of you. Naomi smiled through her tears. I couldn't have done it without you or her. She gestured toward Mrs. Thompson, who had given everything she had to teach Naomi to dance and to live fearlessly. As the three of them sat quietly in the hospital room, Naomi felt something new. Hope. Real hope. The kind that comes not from luck, but from courage, perseverance, and love. Yet, outside the hospital windows, shadows stretched long in the late afternoon sun. Naomi could feel them, faint but persistent, like reminders that life would always have obstacles. And somewhere beyond the edges of her vision, a new challenge was waiting, one that would test everything she had learned. But Naomi no longer feared it. She had faced fear before, and she had danced through it, and she would do so again. Because she was Naomi, and she was unstoppable. Naomi woke before dawn, the soft gray light of early morning spilling through her window. Today was different. She could feel it in her bones. The city outside was quiet, almost holding its breath, and Naomi knew. Today she would face the biggest test of her life. Not just for dance, not just for Mrs. Thompson, but for herself. She dressed quickly in her practice clothes, tying her hair back tightly, and checked the medal she had retrieved from the Elmwood girls. It glinted in the morning light, a reminder of everything she had survived. Fear, bullying, doubt, and even threats. She clenched it in her small hands, determination radiating from her like fire. Naomi, Ms. Walker said softly as she came to the door. Remember everything we talked about. Trust yourself. Dance from your heart. Naomi nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. I will, Mom. I promise. They arrived at Elmwood Academy just as the doors opened. The familiar hallways felt different today, heavy with expectation, yet charged with possibility. Naomi's pulse quickened. The rival girls were already there, whispering to each other, eyes flicking toward her. Naomi didn't flinch. She had learned to face fear head-on. A tall man in a suit, one of the judges from the previous hospital incident, stepped forward. His voice carried through the hallway. Today we are holding a special performance. Every student will demonstrate their skills. We'll be observing not just technical ability, but courage, discipline, and heart. Naomi's stomach tightened. Her chest felt full of butterflies, but she remembered Mrs. Thompson's words. Strength comes from dancing, even when life pushes you down. When it was Naomi's turn, she stepped onto the stage. Her legs shook, but she held her chin high. The lights above her seemed almost blinding, but she focused on the rhythm in her mind, the music she had practiced to for months, and the image of Mrs. Thompson smiling softly beside her. The other girls watched from the sides. The tallest one, the one who had threatened her in the hospital, crossed her arms. Naomi felt a flicker of fear but pushed it aside. She remembered every fall, every insult, every time she had been told she didn't belong. None of that mattered here. Only her dance mattered. Naomi began to move. At first it was quiet, delicate, almost tentative. She stretched her arms, lifted her legs, and spun lightly, feeling the floor beneath her. The audience leaned forward, sensing the quiet determination in her movements. Then slowly Naomi poured everything she had into her dance. Her fear, her pain, her hope, her love for Mrs. Thompson. Each twirl and leap carried a story. Each step spoke of courage. The medal she held in her hand gleamed under the stage lights, a talisman of her perseverance. A hush fell over the room. The judges leaned forward, pens forgotten in their hands. Even the rival girls seemed to pause, unable to look away. Naomi's heart pounded, but she didn't stop. She danced faster, higher, freer than she ever had before. Every motion told the truth of her heart. Then it happened. The tallest Elmwood girl gasped. Something in Naomi's movements struck her deeply. She blinked rapidly, unable to look away. For the first time, Naomi saw not cruelty, but awe in her rival's eyes. Naomi twirled one last time and leaped into the air. Her landing was perfect, her arms held gracefully above her head, and for a moment the room seemed to hold its breath. Then silence. The judges were leaning forward, their eyes glistening. One of them wiped a tear away. Naomi didn't understand at first. She had danced, yes, but why were they crying? Mrs. Thompson's voice echoed softly in her mind. Dance from your heart, and the world will see your courage. The audience erupted into applause. It started softly, then grew louder, filling the room with cheers. Naomi's chest swelled. She had done it. She had faced fear, the rival girls, and her own doubts, and she had danced with her heart wide open. The tallest Elmwood girl stepped forward slowly. Naomi braced herself, expecting another confrontation. Instead, the girl held out her hand. I was wrong, she said quietly. You're amazing. You're braver than any of us. Naomi blinked, tears welling in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. The other girls nodded, some hesitantly, others more openly, acknowledging Naomi's strength. It was more than victory. It was recognition, respect, and the quiet triumph of courage over fear. The judges stood, clapping loudly. One of them spoke, his voice full of emotion. Naomi, your performance has shown us something extraordinary. Talent is not measured by technique alone. It's measured by the heart, by perseverance, and by the ability to rise even when the world tries to push you down. You have all of that and more. Naomi's legs trembled. She wanted to fall to them, to hug Mrs. Thompson, but she stayed upright, holding her chin high. She had dreamed of this moment, imagined it countless times, but nothing had prepared her for the overwhelming weight of its reality. Then, one of the judges handed her a certificate. For exceptional courage, heart, and skill, we award this to Naomi Thompson, he said, using her full name. Naomi's hand shook as she took it. She could hear her mother crying softly behind her. She thought of Mrs. Thompson in the hospital bed, And even though she wasn't there in person, Naomi felt her presence in every beat of her heart. The rival girls stepped forward again. The tallest one spoke softly. "We'll be watching. Maybe we can learn from you too." Naomi smiled genuinely. "We all can," she said. The applause continued as Naomi walked off the stage, the medal gleaming in her bag, the certificate in her hand, and the knowledge in her heart that nothing, not fear, not threats, not doubt, could stop her from dancing or from dreaming. Later, at the hospital, Naomi returned to Mrs. Thompson. The old woman was sitting up, stronger now, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Naomi," she said softly. "You danced with your heart. You've shown everyone, even those who doubted, what courage looks like." Naomi knelt beside her. "I couldn't have done it without you. You taught me everything about dancing and about life." Mrs. Thompson smiled, weak but radiant. "Remember, Naomi, always dance with your heart, and never let anyone make you feel small. Courage, kindness, and love, those are the true steps in life." Naomi nodded. She took Mrs. Thompson's hand and held it tightly. "I promise. Always." And in that moment, Naomi realized something incredible. Victory was not just about applause or medals. It was about standing tall, protecting those you love, and never letting fear control your heart. Outside the hospital, the sun set, painting the sky with gold and pink. Naomi looked out the window, feeling the warmth on her face. She had faced the toughest challenges of her life and emerged stronger, braver, and more certain than ever. The shadows of fear would come again, she knew. Life would always challenge her. But Naomi Thompson had learned a lesson more important than any dance step or medal. Her courage, heart, and kindness could conquer anything. And with that thought, Naomi smiled. She was ready for whatever came next. The applause, the challenges, the fear. They were all part of her story now. And Naomi knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning of a lifetime of dancing with courage, hope, and love. If you enjoy this story, subscribe to the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories.